Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I sit here and I've listened to my colleague and I've listened to others. And I think it's the first time in the 12 years that I've been here that we all seem to be talking to each other about something that's really, really important. And it's nice to hear that we all care and we all say the right things. But where do we go after today? And if it's just we vote on our motion and we pass it, we say the nice things, tomorrow we wake up and we go our own way again. We've been talking about this issue for many, many years. Never have we talked about it in the context of an Opposition Day motion that our leader put forward. And I'm really grateful that he did that, because it does give us an opportunity to talk about something that nobody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about the suffering that's going on in the streets of our city, in the houses, in our families, all the suffering that is going on, but nobody tells anybody else what goes on in their house. We all keep it hidden because nobody wants to talk about those difficulties. Whether you have a child who's suffering from a drug addiction, or you're dealing with a child who has schizophrenia. Somehow nobody wants to talk about that. Everything's wonderful in this world we live in. There's a few people that don't have a place to live, and a few people that go to food banks, but otherwise everybody in the world is good. Well, that would be great if we could solve all those problems. But when you have so many people in this country suffering from mental illness in one capacity or another, we heard the numbers today. You know, another 10 people will die today, will commit suicide because of the feeling of hopelessness. And none of us seem to be able to see it. We had a young man that was part of our extended family, grew up with my son. And he was fine. He was just like any other kid. Didn't cause any trouble, went to school, didn't get great marks, but he was doing just okay. He was 20 years old, second year of college. Challenges with his parents because he wasn't doing well enough. And he'd been at our house for supper, and my son and himself, they did the homework together, and bye, good night, we'll see you on the weekend, and so on. Next day, his mother called to see if Sean happened to be at our house. And I said, no, he's not at our house, he's at your house. No, he didn't come home last night. We thought somehow he maybe stayed at your place. So we all call around, and we can't find him. And then we come to realize his backpack was gone from his bedroom. So we did what people do. They called the police. We called everybody there was to call. And there was no locating Sean. And some months later, his shoes were found on the side of the Niagara Escarpment. And his parents had found a prescription for drug medication, for depressants, in his drawer at home. The doctor had said that he was being treated for severe depression that none of us had any idea of. And the doctor couldn't tell the parents because he was 20 years old, and he needed their son's permission to tell them. So needless to say, that's how we found out that he was suffering from severe depression. But otherwise, none of us had any idea. From the day they found his shoes to today, which is 14 years later, a day doesn't go by that I don't think about him, that our families don't think about him, and wonder why we didn't see any of the signs of the depression that he was suffering from. How did we miss it? Because it's a mistake for all of us. We need to be able to see the signs, but we need to know that there is services available to help people when they're suffering from that level of depression. And I'm sure that as long as I am alive, and my husband and our families, and especially my son and his family, we will think about him often and blame ourselves for not seeing those signs. And that's only one section of all of this, because the problems are severe. And if we can find money for everything else in this world of ours, why can't we make it a priority to find money to have a serious mental health strategy, which would include a strategy to prevent suicide? Look how many times in the last couple of weeks have we heard about young kids committing suicide because they were gay, committing suicide because they were being bullied and they couldn't handle it anymore. I mean, it's way over the hill with these things that are happening, and we're allowing it to happen. And all of us in this house, with all these great things we talk about, if we can't deal with the issues of mental illness in this country and start to come forward and talk about it as Canadians and finding answers, those answers are there. It's encouraging to know how much everybody cares today about this issue, and hearing my colleague talk about his own personal problems within his family. What happens to the families who don't have a support system, who don't know where to go, who have nowhere to go? And these kids, these young people, these older people end up on the streets. When you see people begging on the streets, don't tell me they're there because they want to be there. They're there because they're not well. They are not mentally or physically well, or they wouldn't be sitting on a street corner in the middle of winter begging for money. But we walk by them and do nothing. But to me, it's a major problem when we walk by and do nothing. That individual is one of God's children, just like we are, and deserves help and assistance to move forward. And I would hope, as a result of this discussion today, that we actually do more than just adopt our Opposition Day motion, but that we truly make a commitment, both physically, financially, and mentally, that we aren't going to stop. We've got 4 years ahead of us before we have to worry about elections. And maybe the one thing that this House does in this next 4 years is to actually put forward with a mental health strategy for this country and put the dollars behind it. And I think if we could do that over 4 years, I think we would leave here feeling as if we actually are accomplishing something. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for her speech on this important topic. As a number of the people in the House have stated, there isn't a single member who has not been touched by this by friend or family or in their community. I'm fully aware of the fact that those who are well-to-do, as the Honourable Member previously mentioned, have a hard time struggling with addressing mental health issues in their family, let alone suicide. Most families cannot afford the fees for a psychologist. It's reprehensible in this modern day and age. As I'm sitting here, it's occurring to me, and I would appreciate the member's comment on this. We're moving forward, and several years from now we're going to have a new health accord. Two issues. One, is it not time that we started opening up to the public a dialogue on what the federal responsibilities are and how the federal government should be delivering on its responsibilities, including in working with territories, provinces, and First Nation governments, which we have to remember is an order of government, in the delivery of our services? And does she agree that mental health, including suicide, should probably be part of that dialogue?
For York West.
Certainly would hope it would be. Frankly, I think maybe what we need to do, if we look at that health accord and start dealing with mental health right at the top. Many of the people who are suffering from a variety of different parts of this package of mental health that we talk about, if they were mentally better, if they were stronger, if they were physically and mentally stronger, maybe it would be less health and less of a strain on the rest of the mental health, on the rest of the whole health system that we deal with. If people are suffering from depression and so on and so forth, they're bound to be at the doctor far more often because of a variety of different illnesses. So what I would have liked to have seen is maybe that's got to be the number one thing, is the mental well-being of Canadians, and we start there, and all of the other things may fall into place.
Comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I listened intently to the member's speech, and I know it was a very heartfelt speech. And I was wondering if I could get her comments. She did mention a mental health strategy for Canada, and I know she's supportive of the Mental Health Commission, which is actually working on the development of a mental health strategy. Consultations are currently underway. The Commission actually expects the release of this strategy in 2012, and there will be elements of suicide prevention. We expect that to be in it. But my question is for her, when we start working together with all the different levels of government, community organizations, it's very important for all of us to be on the same page, and we're looking for leadership and local solutions. I was wondering, in her opinion, how can municipalities and communities get together to share their successes to help address this horrible tragedy of suicide?
The Honourable Member for York West.
I think we have to start thinking out of the box. Let me tell you quickly about a problem I had as a Metro Councillor in the City of Toronto. I had a problem with street prostitution. Many of these young women were homeless, drug addicts, there for all kinds of reasons. And I was tired of moving them up and down from my area to someone else's area with police enforcement. So I pulled all of the appropriate officials together, and we did some serious brainstorming, and I developed the First-Time Offenders Diversion Program, which is so-called John School. I was thinking out of the box. We need to think differently on how we can answer these problems. The current way we're doing them clearly is not meeting, is not enough. I do welcome the recommendations that will come out of the Mental Health Commission and so on. But everything is taking too long, and we just don't seem to be, we're too bureaucratic in trying to figure out our answers. And I think working with our cities and our provinces, you know, you come together, we all recognize it, we need to talk about it every day and figure out solutions. And I hope as a result of today's discussion we'll do that.